good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take the time to thank you all for joining us. This is the first roundtable I've hosted in 2022. So it's been a while since I've seen some of you. And yes, I do wear glasses now. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Simon, and I'll let you introduce the talk.
Hello, everybody. Well, feel free at any point to break in, and I'm also keeping an eye on the chat window. So, nothing wrong with just expand that out so I can see all your lovely faces. Hello, everybody. I am looking at you. I got 3 monitors because that's the way I like to roll. Right. It's just going to be a relatively quickie talk today. I've tried to add a little more content on, but last time I did this, it was ran for about 20 odd minutes. So hopefully we can have a nice easygoing time of it, and then off to wherever afterwards. 12. Oh, cool. Okay. Go away. Can you actually see this window thing that's popping up here like this?
Yep.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay then. Right. It's just a quick little talk about a topic that I've always kind of been rather fascinated by, and that's steganography, which is different to encryption, but kind of vaguely along the same lines. Oh, and by the way, all my contact details are down the bottom here, so feel free. If anyone's got a question, wants to hurl abuse, or maybe not if you want to hurl abuse, but if you want to ask a nice question or whatever, then feel free. I'm easy to find. I run a blog these days on the website as well, if you care to go read it. I'm even doing some talks about computer-related films on and off. I've so far done Tron and the Desk Set, the first film ever made in 1955 to feature a computer programmer. And weirdly, I'd never seen Tron. I know. I feel like I ought to hand in my geek card for not having seen that, but I hadn't. It was rather sweet. I thought it was quite fun. The graphics still look pretty good. Right, anyway, let's get on with things. So, it's got a long and established history of steganography. Now, steganography is different, as I say, to encryption. Encryption is take a plain text message and then render it into a form which is illegible to anyone who is not allowed to read it. Steganography doesn't take that approach, although you could use them both. Steganography says, hide the message. Make it so that you are unaware the message exists. That's steganography. I think it means something like secret writing, something along those lines. So this gentleman is Herodotus, although looking at that inscription there, actually his name is Herodotos. I think
no, it's correct. It's correct. That's it's Greek. I can read it.
Yeah, me too. But they're missing a diagraphic mark, I think, there. So technically, that's Herodotos. Because that's not an H; it's an I. But,
tomatoes.
But I love ancient Greek literature. But yeah, anyway, he recorded in his histories 2 different instances of steganography, which I found rather interesting. One was on wax tablets. Now, wax tablet in those days was a sheet of wood and then wax on the front. And then what you would do is write your message in the wax, pass it along. And when you were done, wipe off the wax, new wax, and you use it again. Great. It's a sort of reusable letter. And what people were doing was writing messages on the wood and then putting the wax on the top. You have a message concealed within the tablet. And the other one, this is the slightly more ridiculous example, and I adore this story, was that there was, I don't know the full detail because I'm going to be honest, I've never read Herodotus, but the story was that they wanted to, there were cities which were revolting, there was civil wars going on, and someone wanted to pass a message secretly from one city to another. And I can only guess that the siege must have been incredibly slow, because this was the plan. You get yourself a slave, cut all his hair off, tattoo the message on his head, let him get his hair back, and send him on his way. And that is actually recorded in Herodotus. So presumably you could also use this method only once per slave as well, because this poor sod has got this message stuck on his head for the rest of his life. I don't know.
Very interesting episode of Tattoo Fixers to perhaps that was our first episode.
Very, very likely, yeah. Now, anyone who's ever read any ancient history probably is aware that you should take any ancient history with a massive old grain of salt. because they all had this tendency to, lie or exaggerate or just literally make stuff up, So I don't know. But according to Herodotus, this is totally what they did. So fine. I don't know. But it is certainly one of the first ever recorded examples of steganography. I think the encryption may well have a similar pedigree. I don't know. I know that the famous simple cipher is the Caesar cipher, named after guess whom, and I'm not necessarily saying that he invented it. I doubt it, but clearly that goes back a while too. Anyway, this lady is Simone Seguin. She was, you could probably guess, a member of the French Resistance, and the interesting story from those guys is that there were messages sent over the wireless all the time, and that was in the clear from the British to the French to give the resistance orders. And most of the time it was literal gibberish, but I don't know actually what it was, but there was one particular sequence of words, and if that sequence occurred, that was the signal to go ahead and shoot some Nazis. So, but the point was that you hid it within the actual total nonsense, and anyone could listen to this and no one would know which was the real important words and which were not. So this even has got its uses. As a microdot, you've probably seen those in films. I can't remember which film I screen grabbed this from. I have a feeling it might well be like Mission Impossible or something. But we've probably heard of the microdot if you've ever seen a spy film. And as far as I'm aware, that really is a thing. Although that probably actually literally is a dot for the purposes of the film. I don't know. Secret writing, there's another one. Invisible ink. Did anyone ever have one of those pens for your bike when you're at school, where you could write your postcode in UV ink? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I don't know whether anyone ever actually did this. I never did. But supposedly you could write, I did do that one. No, supposedly you could write with lemon juice onto paper. And then if you put that paper near something hot like a hob, the ink would turn brown. So I can't imagine that would fool many crack Nazi anti-terrorism squads, but it was supposedly a thing you could do.
Probably smell the lemon and guess.
Probably. I did also hear a story that one of their methods, supposedly if you boil an egg, you can write messages in certain kinds of acid on the outside of the shell and it will seep into the egg. So supposedly the French resistance would do this, and cycle around, whatever town they were in with this basket of eggs. And all you had to do was crack them all open, and there's the secret message, and then you just eat the evidence. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to think that it is. That sounds cool. Right. But anyway, moving on. So I'm going to talk for a while about steganography and images. Now, this lady here is Lena Sjöblom. She is, I believe, a Swedish model. Now, this image I'm presenting for historical significance. I have done image processing courses at university, and this is the go-to image that you'll see on nearly any image processing course. It has a historical reason, and that is that in the 1970s, there was an American chap working in a university over there, and he was developing a new system for compressing images and passing them around, and he needed a test image, so he grabbed around for whatever he had about his person, and it was a copy of Playboy. And this is an image from Playboy. It wasn't entirely random. I think that apparently there is something about the fact that you've got all these different textures of her face, of the boa and the different colors. I cannot show you the rest of the image, not without getting thrown out of this call. So, but I think this is an interesting little bit of historical significance, and Lena here what we did become aware of how widespread the use of her image was, and I believe I'm not sure if she's still alive, but she has attended image processing conventions as guest of honor because of the significance of this image in the history of image processing. Incidentally, the algorithm that was used, that was developed with the use of this image, it was JPEG. So Lena here is in part responsible for the development of JPEG. But being that this is the 21st century, I'm not really sure this is the sort of image I should still be using. I'd like to salute Lena here as being significant to the history of this, but it's perhaps time for her to retire gracefully. So I'm going to use something entirely more wholesome and healthy. Desperate Dan bars. I don't know if anyone remembers these. I certainly do. When I was a kid, this was one of my favorite sweets. For anyone who has never been, I don't think you can buy them. I don't think they exist anymore. They were bright, luminous orange, with orange flavored with these big black crystals that were sweet. I don't know what they were. I probably don't want to know. But they were awesome. Anyway, this is an image of some Desperate Dan bars. So this is going to be my test image that I'm going to try and hide some secret information in. Now, the secret information I'm going to hide is the text of a novel that I've got some history with. And that's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Not only one of the best books ever written, and it is, but I don't know if anyone was on one of my previous talks where I talked about generating my own sequel using some statistics. So I'm going to see how much of Pride and Prejudice can I hide inside the picture of Desperate Dan. And it's, for reference, it's not a very big image. That actually is real size, I think. It's pretty small. I've got some statistics later. So let's have a look at how you go about this. So these are the first words of the text file that I'm using. Funnily enough, the title of the novel. Those aren't really underscores, by the way. Those are spaces. I've just put them there to make it clear that there is a character. It is a thing. And this is how it would render in ASCII. So I'm guessing everyone's happy with ASCII. If anyone's not happy with ASCII, this is going to be confusing for you. But that's just the numeric representation of each letter. So far, so good. And ASCII, of course, boils down to binary. Also, if you're not happy with the concept of a number turning into binary, also going to be tricky for you for a while. So I just said it's someone who at least it's not a cat. No cats. I think there was a Corky the cat in the Beano though. So each one of those ASCII numbers actually renders like this in binary. Okay, and I've just put a space in between the between groups of 4 just to make it a little more easy to read. So far, so good. Then examining the image, this is what the first pixel looks like. It's encoded in RGB format, that is red, green, blue. How much red, how much green, how much blue. This is pretty standard. There are other formats but this one happens to be RGB, so fine. And that's the first pixel, the very first one, which is actually up the top left, I think. And that's what the second pixel looks like. Pretty much indistinguishable. I can't tell the difference there. But if you look, they're not actually the same value. They're subtly different. There's shifts by like 1 in the red. And what's the green doing? That's gone down 1. And the blue, that's gone up 1. But I can't see the difference. And that's the whole point. That's where we can be sneaky, because the human eye is absolutely rubbish. It's, if you were designing a piece of an actual piece of hardware for looking at things and analyzing things, the human eye is appalling. So this is where we can, this is the thing we can rely on to try and hide some information. So looking at the first 4 pixels of our image, they look like this. Now, incidentally, in an image, when you look at it, at least in C#, the order is actually kind of, I don't know if you can see you'll notice this in a little while, but it actually goes like this, goes down like that. This is, I believe this is x equals 0, and then this is x equals max down here. No, it's x, y, sorry, y. Yeah, x goes from here to here, y actually goes from here to here. I don't know, but it's the way it is. I guess it's because the image renders from the top going down.
And just
so this is our first
trivia there. If it was a BMP file, it would actually be upside down. Believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I used a PNG as it happens. Now, I think you can do this with JPEGs, but I think it's an awful lot harder because JPEGs are so heavily compressed. So I have seen articles out there on doing this with JPEGs, but that's a whole more problematic thing. I'm using a PNG which holds its RGB values consistently as it's moved, as it's saved. And this is how they represent into binary. And there's the binary for Pride and Prejudice. So what I'm going to do is shuffle the one into the other. And what I'm going to do is replace what's called the least significant bit. That is the one on the end here. There you go, the one down here. This is the one that represents either literally a 1 or a 0. So this is the variance that you saw on those first 2 pixels, where it can go up by 1 or down by 1, and no one can see the difference. So instead, what I'm going to do is take one of these guys one at a time and replace them going down here. So it ends up looking like this now. So actually quite a few of the values stay the same. So we're pretty much win-win for us here. There's only a few that have shifted slightly. So if you want to see what this looks like, there you go. Exactly the same. I can't honestly tell the difference there. There we go. It's 500 by 310. So this is a 500 pixel by 310 pixel. I might have enlarged it, I'm not sure, but that's how big this actually is. And the competition for myself here is how much of the novel can I squeeze in. So at the moment, we've got 455,000 pixels, which is 56K's worth. Now the values is taking each one from each of these, 3 from each of these pixels, then grouping by 8. And then this is how many actual values we can store. So we can store basically 56K of data inside that thing. It's quite a lot for 1 byte of replacement. 22% of the book, in fact. That's not bad. That's not bad. It's quite a long book. I don't know if anyone's ever seen a physical copy. It was published in something like 3 volumes, so it's a big old book. But we can do this better. There are better ways of doing this. There's my code, at least some of it. Now, I'm a big fan of functional programming, as anybody that knows me and has ever spoken to me about code for more than, say, about 10 minutes would know. So that's how I tend to program things when I can, although, as you'll find out, the lower you go down into the world of moving around bits and bytes and things, the nastier your code tends to end up looking, because that's just the way it is. Ooh, connections unstable. I can still sort that out. Ah, eat it. There we go. Right. Okay. So what have I done? This here is a little extension method, which is transforming a car being a single character, into an array of bools. This is bools because bools are actually weirdly the only way to represent a bit of information, because it's true or it's false. There is no bit data structure that I'm aware of in C#. This is the exact mirror opposite of TSQL, where they've got a bit but they don't have a bool. Because, but fine. Anyway, I'm going to turn this into an array of bools. Has anyone ever come across bit shifting before? Because that's what this is. Yeah, we all okay with bit shifting? So what I'm doing there, shift it 7 places and then check it against whether it's the same as 1, and that gets me my Boolean value, and then just, yeah, that's just, it's probably quite an expensive operation, but I'm only doing it once, so that's fine. So select out, I've done a select many. So what I've got then is a great big enormous list of all of the, this is of the message, by the way, of all the bits of the message, all separated out into their individual component bits, and then select them out with an index, group them. The index is just so I can restore them later, I believe. And group by, that's maths, add group to 3. Yeah, 3 because 3 pixels. And then select out to an array. So what I'm doing is take the novel, split it out to every bit imaginable, and then group it into 3s so that I can put each group of 3 into a pixel. And that's stuffing it into a pixel. That is a nasty old bit of code, not going to lie. But there you go. This is there is an A value as well. I believe that's the transparency level of the bit. I don't really I tried messing with that and strange things happen, so I'm leaving that well alone. But fine, for the moment, I am just going with RG and B. So then that's setting a pixel. That's not too bad. It's just 2 great big long for loops, and then deciding based on whether the bit that I'm looking at is a true or a false, whether to leave it alone or to inverse it. If anyone wants this source, they're welcome to a copy. Not sure why. And then that's yielding out the RGB values. So we're returning this now into, let's get it right. Fine. That's what the source code looked like. So ways of improving this thing. That's our bytes again. Now, an interesting thing to notice here is that's always 0. That is literally always 0. because the ASCII table's only this long, it doesn't actually use the most significant bit at all. It only, I think there are some special characters beyond this, but I don't think we use them.
No, they were never agreed upon as a standard. So that's the extended ASCII, which no one ever agreed on. And that's where UTF came in as a standard.
Yes, and this isn't UTF, and that's fine. UTF would be a whole different matter because that's got a will. But this is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. She doesn't use special characters, I am certain. And to be honest, there's probably clever ways we could handle that if we were really bothered. But for now, as it happens, there are only 127 values, so we can actually ignore the most significant bit because it's irrelevant. It's always 0. So I have created a new function where I'm skipping one. I'm just doing 7 values out of it. So what percentage of the book have I got in there now? Same number of pixels and everything, 26%. Yay, little bit more. But we can do better. We can do better than this. There's still more we can do. Zipping. We can zip the flipping data going in and out. This is my byte array going in and out. I could use gzip. So that would certainly compress it down a whole load further, as long as we know to unzip it at the other side, but that's fine. Again, it's still within the spirit of steganography. We are not encrypting it. As long as you know the secret, you can reverse it on the other side. So what percentage of the book do we want to guess is in there now? Still the same 1 pixel replaced with a gzip version. It is now 64% of the book. It's pretty good. Still a lot more we can do though. That's just 1 bit replaced. But here's the thing. How many bits can we replace before someone actually starts noticing anything? So I don't want to take any bets now. There are 8 bits in every pixel, in every value of every pixel. I don't want to take a guess at where we stop before someone starts noticing that something funny is going on. Go on, take a guess.
I think you can get away with possibly 3. I wouldn't go any further than that, though.
Oh, 3. Anyone want to take a guess forward or backward from 3? Any other guesses? Go on. No. Okay. Well, prepared. 3 sounds good. Well, let's see. So this is 1 bit replaced. Okay. That means I've only replaced the least significant bit, and all the other 7 are as they were. So let's see. 2 bits replaced. We now fit 100% of the book, by the way. We've now completely hidden the entire text of Pride and Prejudice in this 500 by 310 pixel image of Desperate Danvers. That's awesome. But I'm not done. I'm going to see how far we can take this. But so 2 bits replaced, that is 2. That's a 2 and a 1. That's plus or minus 3, I think, at this point. So what does it look like if we went and replaced another bit? Here's your 3. That's where we again. I've just left 100% on now because we're probably able to fit a book and a half in at this point. That's 3 bits replaced. I don't know what that was. That 1, 2, and 4, 4. Plus or minus 8, something like that. I don't know. That's a fair bit of information. That means we're hiding 3, 6, 9. We're heading 9. We're heading just over a byte in every single pixel now, and it's still pretty much. I'll go back one. Look. Now it's wobbles slightly. I think that's actually an artifact of me just not quite aligning them right, but it looks the same. So we're now at the point. You got the same name as me. Other Simon, when where you thought. So according to you, then the next one ought to look different. It doesn't.
Ooh, I think I do around the McCowans.
A little bit.
Yeah. Just
there is
just.
I
don't think it, to be honest with you, I still wouldn't suspect. I just consider it a low quality image like a JPEG at this point.
I'm not even sure if you necessarily. Yeah, you're right. There's a little bit. You can just about see it, but that's because we're looking at them side by side. I think if you pass this around, honestly, no one would ever notice. So that's 4 bits replaced. That's actually half of the original information has been destroyed and replaced with our text. That's incredible. Want to take any bets on it looking worse for 5? There's 5. Still not really looking significantly bad. It might be a little more blockiness, but that's 5. 6.
Now you're seeing it.
Now we're seeing it.
Sure.
So there you have it. You could probably, I mean, it might depend on the image. If your picture is, I don't know, a snowstorm with a swan and some snowballs and some snowdrops, all that white, you might notice. But if you've got a noisy image, I could probably even have chosen something noisier than this picture of Desperate Dan, and I bet we could get away with this if it were really full of detail. Now, to be honest, that's clearly, in fact, if you look here, that is the point at which Pride and Prejudice stops, and this is original unencoded information. So that's really quite obvious when that happens. But I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. Would you necessarily look squiffy at that? I mean, it's not a very good quality image. I've seen worse floating around on the internet. But there we go, 6 pixels. Care to see what 7 looks like? Yeah, that's something's wrong there. We really have gone too far.
It's like going back to Windows 3.1 kind of thing.
It kind of is, isn't it? And that's probably not entirely a coincidence, because what we're effectively reducing it to is a much reduced color palette with the rounding that we're applying to it. So it's probably not a coincidence that it kind of looks that way. We're kind of shifting back to that style of coloring. But just for the sake of it, and because why not, 8 pixels. I did 8. There you go.
Yeah, no,
that's marvelous, isn't it? I mean, that looks like TV static. I mean, it's not random, but it might as well be for the purposes of this. Although I'm amazed that there is 7 pixels gone. That is 7/8 of all of the original information destroyed, and you can still tell what it is. That's actually quite marvelous. But yeah, that looks interesting. But I'm kind of curious to know what some of these little shapes and patterns are. I'd love to know what that is. It might be just a coincidence, or it might be, I don't know, a chapter break or something. But that is literally a visual representation. Mind you, it's been compressed, so it can't be. It must be a coincidence. Awesome. Anyway, we can go an awfully long way. There's an awful lot. There we go. I calculated down there. So that's 318. Did I? No, I didn't. I didn't update that. Oh well. I should have kept it. But at this point, at least we've got 389K. That's a lot. That's a lot. Now, of course, you wouldn't necessarily use this to put Pride and Prejudice inside your image, but you get the idea. You can pack one heck of a lot of data inside this thing before anyone will necessarily notice there's a problem. Probably depending on your image. So another topic to, oh, no, did I hear someone? No. But in any case, another thing to consider is maybe we also want to keep it a little more secret than that. I mean, right now, anyone who's capable of just mining all the bits out of that thing and then running gzip on uncompressed can get back the original message. But what if we wanted to hide it and keep it secret? There is a technique for this, and it kind of has its origins in a very old cryptographic technique, which I know of in the context of, well, World War II spy dramas and things. It was called a book code. So book code was where you literally have a book, like any old book, and your code would be something along the lines of a page number, a line number, and a word number. And you just sort of go through the book, whatever the book would be. And so long as both of you, before you parted company, agreed on the book, and it would have to be the same book, same edition. And then you'd go to that page, that line, that word, and there you go. Now, the marvelous advantage of this is it is cryptographically unbreakable. If you have a book cipher, a book code, book cipher, whatever, there is no way to break it unless, you discover the secret, unless you know what the book is. And I would guess that if those things were ever broken, it was a case of go find the guy's apartment, raid it, and find out what was on his bookshelf. But up to that point, and I believe there are book ciphers in existence that have never been broken because no one ever found out what the secret was. So there is a way of doing it like this, and we don't have to use a book. I'm going to use a word. I'm going to use the word Jane because, why not? Hey, this is good enough for now. This technique is called chaffing and winnowing, which I believe is a term that goes back to harvesting. It's something like the process where you take your whole wheat grains and you're kind of trying to separate the kernels from the stuff you don't want. And I think the stuff you don't want is the chaff. I guess winnowing must be getting the, I don't know. But what we're going to do is use this as a model for determining which pixels to fill in. So what we'll do is compare the digits of Jane here, one after the other, with the last digit here, and then whether this is a 1 or a 0 is what makes the decision to replace or leave it alone. So, for example, on the first one here, if you see that some of those are no longer filled in, the first character here is a 0. This is a 0, so that means leave this alone. As it happens, it was a 0. This is a 1, so that means we do replace. That means here we replace, that's a 1, do we replace, and so on. So if you look at the first 0, 1, 0, and then the next one's down here. And the beauty is that unless you know what the original code word was, there is literally no way to ever extract that information back out of the image again, because there's no way to predict what the pattern was that the data has been scattered through with. That's so you can make it really quite secret if you really need to. Oh, there we go, chaffing with Winnowing. So that's awesome. So what's the point? What's the point of all this? Well, the first is, honestly, this is fun. I mean, why not? Now, you don't necessarily have to write your own. There are tools for doing this. I think Linux comes with some built in, I think. Certainly, it's not terribly hard to go and find yourself. There's a couple of libraries for, you just literally command line. This is my message. This is the image. Make a new image with the hidden stuff in. Great. So that's marvelous. But what actual benefit could this bring? There's a couple.
Copyright your digital signature. Copyright.
There you go. So if you were going to share an image around and you were concerned that no one might give you the appropriate, oh yeah, so sorry, John, I just noticed that. Try it a white photo. Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Now that you've said that, I want to go and do that. Watch this space for an updated version of this talk where I actually stick this on a white image and see what it looks like. I'd also be interested to get a very busy image, like, I don't know, a city centre or something, lots of people, and then see how far I can push it. But yes, copyright. If someone lays claim to your image, your digital painting, or your lovely digital photography that you're trying to sell, then you can say, well, okay, then what's the secret message? And then you can produce the secret message by either literally, well, it's probably in this case worth using chaffing and winnowing to put a secret code on there so that you, knowing the code, can produce the image back, the code back again, and prove that you know something that the person claiming doesn't. So that's one method. I don't know whether anyone really does this to a great extent. To be honest, these days, the secret seems to be share from your own account wide as possible and make sure that everyone who's paying attention knows it was you, but there might be cases. I'd love to know where this is, incidentally. I found this on the internet, but yeah, hiding suspect stuff in your image. This like this wonderful replica of the Trojan horse, wherever. That looks like Greece in the background to me, so I'm guessing somewhere in Greece. Or Turkey, could be. So this is actually something that does happen. Of course, this needs a two-part system to work. You can bring the image over to the target computer. Now, the target, that could actually then contain an application, an entirely dodgy application, which could be a Trojan, could be any number of horrible things. And you'd also need another process running which knows that the application exists and can extract it out. Now, this is somebody clicking on a dodgy link, basically, or probably opening a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet they really, really, really shouldn't have opened, because those things can run VB in the background, and that can do, well, anything you really care to make it. So I certainly know of companies who've been hacked in recent days, well, last year or so, purely because somebody was sent an Excel sheet they really shouldn't have opened. And this is the sort of thing that can happen. Now, whether there was an image related there somewhere, I don't know, but it is a way of sneaking an executable past the virus scanner, past the firewall, because it doesn't look like anything. And if you've chaffed or winnowed it, there really is no way to know it's there. So that is more than slightly terrifying. but true. And if we can fit the whole of Pride and Prejudice into a small 500 by 200 image of Desperate Dan, imagine what you could put in a high definition file. Lots. You could probably hide quite a lot in there. There are also
a lot of attacks for Windows just happen by that way, by GDI library.
Really?
Yeah,
it really is. Okay, so there you go. I'm onto something. So yeah, the moral of this story is don't trust anyone, don't trust anything. Probably shouldn't trust yourself while you're at it, because you're probably trying to destroy your own company or something. But yes, this is a very real threat and a very real phenomenon. So is this one. This is a slightly different form of steganography, and that is that computers are actually capable of outputting sounds well beyond human audible frequencies, because our ears, as well as our eyes, are absolutely rubbish. There's a really tiny little band that we can hear, and everything out of that we can't. And your phone and your various devices around the house can both transmit and receive those frequencies that we can't hear. So yeah, these are examples from I pulled from Ars Technica not so long ago. But I think there was an example given on one of these where there was going to be an Alexa advert given at an American Super Bowl, and Apple said they had deployed a method to prevent all the Alexas around the world from suddenly all saying, yes, what do you want? As soon as the telly started saying Alexa. And the theory was that there's a frequency being emitted by the telly beyond the human audible range that was telling Alexa to stop. So what else can these things do? I don't know. And of course, it's also possible to hide an entire sound file outside of the human range. So if you wanted to hide an audio message, you could probably do it by just bumping up the sound several million octaves or however many it would take, and then apply it onto another entirely innocuous file. And there you go, hidden actual audio message as well. So that's another thing to bear in mind. I believe it is also possible to apply the same steganography technique that I was using earlier, the bit replacing one. You can do that on audio files as well. And I believe you can do it on images, on videos. Because as I understand it, a video is a keyframe, which is a high def image, followed by a series of deltas, which is just the shift of this high definition image shifted a few times until we go to another keyframe. So you could probably just replace in one keyframe of a video. And then the secret becomes which frame, and then you could chaff and winnow, and you could have it really incredibly hidden right there in a video that who knows how many people are watching. So God alone knows what there is out there. There's probably tons none of us are aware of. So that's it. Ooh, I managed to make it 40 minutes this time. I am mildly impressed. So, rest. Does anyone have any questions for me at this point? That's it from me on slides. No?
No, but certainly happy to carry on talking about it, because it's always a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
And some of the things that come to my mind is people actually within certain file formats, they have chunks of data. They explain where the data will be in the file, but you can store a larger file than what the data packet is. So you actually can literally hide the data inside the file without actually affecting the file itself.
Oh yeah, just like past the end of file marker or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Actually, I should make a note of that one. Oh, thank you.
So I've certainly seen that done, and people talk about hiding things like that. But to me, without any kind of mechanism to hide the message, so it's still just garbage data, that's another thing. So here's another curious one with the same idea, your own hard drive. Every time you save a file, it's going to take at least 4K of space, even if it's just a few bytes. What's going to happen to all that other empty space that you're not using? If you know these files are never going to change, like your Windows source files or your DLLs and things that come with your installation, you could modify those and hide an awful lot of things on your disk, and nobody would ever know without actually looking at the individual bits on the disk.
Nice. Now, presumably that would be you hiding data from someone who's presumably coming to take your hard drive off you, because you're a dirty spy or whatever.
That's probably a good way to put it. Yeah, you can do that, I suppose. I bet you there's some Linux guys out there doing things like this.
Probably. Well, that's an interesting one. I'd not considered that one either. I've seen a slightly nice innocent way of using this, and that was when I was browsing the Guardian website a bit ago. And if you open, as I am wont to, I sometimes open the console up and just have a look at how the website works. And they hid a job advert in the console.
And if you found it, give them a call. That's
Yeah,
quite cool. I like that.
That's brilliant, isn't it? It was all like had ASCII art and everything on it, saying if you've got to here, you're clearly the sort of person we want to talk to. You want to join our team. I didn't, but it was such a sweet idea.
I like it.
I like that idea.
So
You could probably
couple
hide
of-
stuff. You can hide stuff in source code, in comments and all sorts in web pages too, if that's the way if you want to hide something like that.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, one of the things that you didn't warn us about in your talk is that it has to be a lossless compression style of image. So something like a GIF or a PNG potentially, but not a JPEG.
I did say that.
Oh, you did?
I did.
I must have been yawning or something at the time. Not because of you, but
I
just
think
because of the end of the day.
I have heard it's possible to some extent to hide things in JPEGs, but I think it's a whole different technique and it is very lossy. Oh, here's another one, actually. This is a nice one. I did this at university. So now I'm trying to remember how it works. It's something like you divvy up it's to hide an image inside any other image. So I'm trying to remember I have to remember how it was done, but it was something like you take the image and break it into blocks. And then you record the transformation of a base image into that block. As in how you would have
the way that JPEG works anyway.
Yeah, and then I've actually seen this done. I mean, and then you apply that transformation to any image, several times, and it never looks like the original image, but you can see the original image kind of emerging out of noise. I'll have to try and see if I can find an article on how to do it again. But it was, as long as you don't care about fine detail, if it was just like, let's say you're a megalomaniacal dictator, not that there's any of those around these days, and you wanted to have someone killed, you could probably hide an image of the person you want bumped off inside this method. And all you'd be sending would be a series of sort of rotate, darken, rotate again type instructions, something like that. That's quite impressive.
Something that's just came back to me, it seems that we mentioned JPEGs as not being possible for this. I do remember a program that I just curiously tried many years ago that depending on how much information you wanted to hide in an image, its goal was to make the file the same size regardless. Okay. So what it did is it uncompressed your JPEG, and if you wanted to hide, say, 5K of data, it would compress the data, the JPEG more to make the file size smaller, and then it just dotted the extra data onto the end. So the file size was identical between the JPEG with the hidden data as well as the JPEG without. But so it's just a slight reduction in image quality that you'd probably never notice, as we've seen today.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I were contemplating telly purchases not long ago, and it got to and she was fretting over how high a quality do we want to go. And I was telling her, like, there is a point, and we've reached that point now where the human eye is no longer capable of seeing any more detail, even if the telly can give us more. It's just, our eyes are not good. We're terrible at seeing detail. At best, go on.
I think I remember reading, I mean, this would be like 5-6 years ago, that there was, to use a 4K image, you need like a 2-meter diagonal TV at sort of the typical 3 to 5 meter viewing distance. So yes, like you say, 8K just doesn't make sense because you need a wall size. Yeah,
if you were a cinema, then you probably want your 8K then, because you're making the image so large that there might be, your viewers might notice something's up. I mean, this is where you get.
I actually know it's only 4K in a cinema.
Is it?
It has been for many, many years. Ever since they started using computers to make footage, etc., The individual 35mm slides were 4K images that were being rendered. There you go. It's a little bit of information for you.
Oh,
So
John
it's only
said,
4K even in a cinema.
really? So 8K it really is a total waste of everyone's time then?
Unless you're sitting in the front row in the cinema. Then you see
Gosh.
right up their nostrils, you know.
Yeah. I do wonder if it's just the telly people just pushing like, go on, you surely want to upgrade to the even better telly. I mean, yeah, but there comes a point where it's good enough. Oh, and John has said that you've found a link there to a Kaspersky warning about bitmap files containing viruses. And yes, like I said, I do know that this really is a thing, but it still needs the trigger program to actually execute what's hidden in the bitmap. So this is where you're supposed to train your business users to look, don't click on the flaming Excel unless you know who it's from.
Exactly, yeah. Don't click any dodgy emails.
Yeah. Your biggest risk in any security system is always going to be the numpties, the other be sitting behind the keyboards who shouldn't be pressing things.
This came up in a talk I was at yesterday. They were saying that the biggest risk to corporate security is always your employees. And it sounds like a very passive aggressive point, but it is very true.
It's true.
It is
Yeah.
always
Human error.
the weakest
It's always
link.
human error, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost, I mean, even if someone does a clever hack, it's usually the human error in that case is probably that someone wasn't patching the server or something. It's still kind of down to something that a human could have done to avoid it ever happening. You know, keep up with your patching regime, make sure you're configuring your firewall right, stuff like that. But the unfortunate thing is that, you know, that as defenders, we have 1 million points of vulnerability and the hackers only need to find one. So yeah, I can imagine how it still takes an awful lot. See, that's why old films can be laser scanned into 4K releases. Yeah, although if you look at I know that old film is capable of producing really incredibly high quality images. Although, you can start to see the grain now, can't you? That's how old films stop scaling up, is because it gets grainier and grainier. Even Jurassic, I was watching Jurassic Park not so long ago, and like that, the grain on that is really quite noticeable.
Part of the charm.
But you're talking about the actual MPEG compression. That only would have been like an MPEG 2 on a DVD. So it's nothing like what we can do today.
No, it's incredible. Unfortunately, there's probably some early digital films, you know, from like probably talking early 2000s that were actually recorded in SD, and there's probably nothing anybody can do with it.
That's correct. Yeah. The older films, you get better quality out of them for that very reason. Once you've recorded it in HD or SD, you're stuck in that quality. You can't make something from nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing anything that's been made now, if they're using a 4K video, that's probably gonna age well, I would guess, because like we were saying earlier, like the 8K thing, most humans can't see that. So I'm guessing that's gonna at least age reasonably.
Yeah, we just look at what's on most people's faces. We all got glasses, although I'm not wearing them. I'll wear it to drive. It's only, you know, because I'm short-sighted, I'm okay. But on a longer distance, it's going to be blurry to me. So everybody, really, there's so few people who truly have 20/20 vision. And the funky thing about talking about 20/20 vision, you can have someone have laser eye surgery and get better than 20/20 vision. So it just goes to show, you know, the human eye can be improved upon.
Yeah, roll on cortical implants and stuff like that, like in Star Trek.
But I will say this, I know the Aborigine in Australia, some of them, it's to do with their genetics, they've got different eyes to us. That within some of them, their eyes are so good, they can actually see Saturn's rings with the naked eye. There's a fact for you. We just see a dot of light in the sky. They can actually just about make out Saturn's rings.
Wow. I, for one, hail our new Aboriginal overlords.
Well, they're older than the white people as a race, aren't they? So
yes, absolutely. Well,
so when they start looking at Saturn's rings and go, is that Pride and Prejudice up there?
Oh, good one.
I missed my spot before. I was going to try and interrupt Simon Miller when you were talking about the Windows operating system. You got a load of files on there that, you know, the way you block save, there's a load of redundant space. I don't know if anyone's heard the Crash Bandicoot story and how they managed to pack a lot more graphics into, I think it was like 2 kilobytes of RAM that they had on the PlayStation 1. So they actually, with the demo box that they got on the PlayStation 1, they went beyond the bounds of what was in the manual for what they were allowed to do. I'll share the link in a second. There's a video on this to give
There's
you
a
more,
good video for it.
Yeah, you sounds like you've seen it, John. But the general gist of it was there's a few more bits on there, but they basically went past the bounds what they were allowed to touch and started pinching bits of RAM from the operating system. Because I think, Sony's Japan, wasn't it? So they spoke to the developers over there and said, you can have a go at it. We know there's bits in there that that don't necessarily get used. And they basically had a much more enriched, thanks for sharing that, had a much more enriched game because of it. So if you compare games at the time, like they do in this video, you had, what was it, Tomb Raider, and like all of the graphics are all washed out. Whereas you look at Crash Bandicoot and the amount of like facets and stuff and detail and texture that you get on the game, granted it's still in cartoon, but the things they were able to do on that because of this kind of approach, if you will, trying to pack more information by just changing the format up, not being bound, and quite as close as you can get to thinking outside the box, I guess, in that scenario.
I did hear there was something you could do with that in a ZX Spectrum. It was something to do with, there's some sort of limit to how much was available memory and not, and you could shift that boundary up and down to kind of shove data into it and then hide it and shift it back. I don't know.
It's called paging. It's called paging. It's literally how they access more than 64K of RAM. That's it. It literally is through a notion of what they call paging. It's it's to do with the way that 256 bytes is considered a page, and it's so by using pages instead of as part of your addressing strategy, you can access a lot more information by having one, but just by pulling a page down into a lower part of memory, then only be able to access it and swapping that out from some other page from elsewhere. It's a little bit like accessing a hard disk, if you see what I mean. Like you're just going to pull a part of that into RAM and then access it. So it's the same kind of concept.
There've been some clever bastards, haven't there?
There really have. Our grandfathers and fathers have really got a lot to answer for. Someone had to think of these things to begin with and solve these initial problems. And space back then in the 1970s, going into the 80s, space was horrendously difficult to work with. Such small amounts of memory, like a 16K if you're lucky in some cases. Or
my dad learnt to program BASIC on a ZX81
that had 1K.
1K. The famous example is the Apollo 11. It didn't have the same size of memory as a pocket calculator.
Something like that, yeah.
Incidentally, the source code for that is available on GitHub. The source code for Apollo 11, and it did contain a few Easter eggs. I think the routine that started the rockets was called Burn Baby Burn.
Oh, cool. There you go. Wow, we are all just total geeks, aren't we?
Yeah. Absolutely. But it's fun, isn't it? I love all this sort of stuff. I think I need to actually have a deeper dig, because it looks like there's plenty of content actually I should be adding to this, because these are all brilliant. I bet this is only scratching the surface.
Well, but don't forget, this is information hiding, not so much stenography, because just to make available space and put some data in that available space that people don't know about is information hiding. It's not really stenography.
Yeah,
you're hiding it in plain sight by putting it in the image and you don't even know it's there, and that is beautiful.
Steganography is literally, it's right there where everyone can see it, but you don't see it. I don't know. So you don't think your Crash Bandicoot? I suppose your Crash Bandicoot's just sort of giving yourself more space to work with, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they did the same thing on the Commodore Amiga, which is before the PlayStation, where there were so many tracks that you could read, but there's another 2 tracks you can get access to, but they're considered risky. So people would put extra data in those tracks, but also they would come up with their own formats so that how large a sector is, how much it can vary per track as you get closer and closer to the center. You've got less and less space. You can play around with those numbers, and you can get, instead of the 720K, you can get 800, 900K if you're really, really clever about it. And that's before any kind of compression. And that's what they were doing back then. That was what made them impossibly difficult to copy, because you had to know about how to get access to the extra bits of the disc that you shouldn't normally have access to, if you see what I mean, because it's what breaks up a track or whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one before. The is that John again? John's just posted an absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but that video is absolutely superb, and I've seen similar things like it. If you don't watch it now, it's worth watching at some point. It's quite an eye opener. I've seen other ones similar. If I'm trying to remember what his name is, but there's a chap on YouTube that does some brilliant videos like this. What is his name? He's a British stage magician who ended up moving into lecturing. He does a lot of skeptical talks and stuff like that, but also he did a series on a quirkology. That was the book. What was the chap's name? Richard Wiseman. Yeah, Richard Wiseman did some very clever videos of this sort. It was all sort of clever psychological tricks. Yes, he did a very clever one where he did a color changing card trick that made use of these sorts of psychological tricks. There we go. Again, if anyone has the time, oh, hang on. I just sent that only to Sam. That's a mistake. Well, not that Sam can't watch it. Feel free, Sam. But
I've just watched the one Jonathan posted. I didn't see it. No.
That's clever, isn't it? And again, it does go to. There was a case I actually heard about when I was doing a security course a bit ago. I mean, when I was at uni, and it was something like there was an experiment being done as to how useful picture IDs were. And they got an ID card made for some bank or other in America. And they replaced the picture with a picture of like a rhinoceros or something, just to see if anyone ever saw it. And no one ever did. Can I share my details again? Sure. Tell you what, I'll put them up on the. I have a website, and I should probably get around to updating the blog a little at the moment, because I'll be honest, I am crazy busy.
I think I'd heard something similar with the photographs on things like credit and debit cards. They try putting people's photos on them. And then someone, they replaced them with like photos of monkeys or something, obviously not the person.
Yeah.
And yeah, the security, where they were using them, just the till assistants just didn't notice.
Yeah, because I mean, from what I understand, our eyesight is actually much worse than we think it is. So we're actually seeing like a little patch like this in proper high definition, and everything else is actually blurry. Now, you don't think it is, but that's because the image that you see is heavily post-processed. So, and your brain is doing all sorts of optimization tricks to make you think that you're seeing a full high definition image, but you're not. You're actually only seeing a tiny part of what's really there. And there are experiments you can do where you can actually see this. That's my LinkedIn. There was a program on, I saw it on Netflix, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's something like Brain Games or something like this. And there was an experiment they did where they told you, look straight dead center in the middle of the screen, and they were going to have two cheerleaders come on the screen side by side like that. And then you would look straight in the middle of the screen, not at them, and then make a choice, left or right, who is the most attractive cheerleader. And, you can make your choices all the way through. And then the big reveal, they're all men in dresses. But if you looked straight forward, you couldn't see that. It's only with little tricks like that you realize how bad our vision is. It's incredible, though.
Oh, I got a good one for you about how bad our vision is. There's a video you can probably find on YouTube. I don't know what it's called, but it was on YouTube, where they're simply asking you to count the number of times these bunch of people are passing balls around.
Yeah, that's the one that
balls passing around. And the gorilla walking through is just, no one sees it. It's crazy. And how many times the ball is passed, everyone gets it wrong as well.
Yeah, that's the one that John put up, I believe. And it's an incredibly clever. Yeah, it's a very clever video.
is so funny.
It is, and it's
almost
yes.
shameful. but once you realize everyone's the same, you don't feel so bad.
No, and we're all, and if you're good at social engineering, we're all quite easy to fool. Apparently a great one for getting into a building is something like have a great big pile of boxes in your arms, like these big heavy boxes, and go near the super secure doorway. People will hold the door open for you. You're in. Use that one with caution. I've never tried it, but that's certainly one.
My friend realised he couldn't get out of a super secure building once before. Had to call for help. It turns out he'd tailgated his way in without realising.
Oh, wow.
We had a pass, but obviously you have to swipe your way in and swipe your way out. And he got stuck in the building.
Oh, because he hadn't swiped in, it didn't regard it as a legitimate attempt to get out.
Correct.
Wow. That's hardcore. I mean, I suppose other circumstances, that's a great thing, because presumably that's your crook who's managed to tailgate in. You don't want them to get out. But wow. Gosh, I'd never heard of that one before. Presumably it was airlocks in and out or something like that.
Not necessarily. I think it was just, it's got the front door, you've got secure doors on the stairs, by the lifts and things. Every doorway's got a pass.
Wow.
And I guess they know where those, I guess you could say like airlocks are, like the staircases are all one section, the main rooms are another. And they know when you swipe from one to the next, you should be in that section.
Right.
So.
No, the airlocks, I call them airlocks. That's what we called them. I've been at places where there's literally two doors immediately adjacent. You have to go through door one, allow door one to close, now open door two, and now you're actually in the building.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I've seen that within buildings themselves as well. Yeah, so you've got that on the way in, and then you've got another one with onto each department.
It was often in entering like the server building or something. You're welcome. No problem, Dermot.
These have reminded me of, I think back when I probably first started programming, my first stab, or as I like to call it, graduating from Excel, being a commercial hand to start with. So VBA, fond memories. So I went over into Python then because I saw some DEF CON videos. So I was like, web scraping, how's that work? So DEF CON pops up. And this is the conversations you're having now. Obviously, some people on this call are aware of the DEF CONs, but have a look at the videos that are available there. Some interesting topics from the wall of sheep, which is the first one that pops to mind, to hacking into IoT devices, but all these kind of edge case clever tricks.
Is that DEFCON or DEFCON?
DEFCON. I assume that is a take on the DEFCON of the American emergency, but it's its own sort of hacking conference. So they do have government officials that go to these things, and we talk about human weakness being one of them. I remember one of the talks, a guy was talking about the very tricks you were talking about. So have a pile of boxes, use the smoker's entrance, went through all the security locks and their vulnerabilities, and how truly vulnerable we are with all these locks. So things like your typical, how to describe it, your lock, I guess the best way to describe it is a lock and key. So the hoop at the top, you hoop it through. Apparently those can be opened with like a toothbrush. So the point was you can use all these common items which someone could just have in their hand and you wouldn't realize to be used for malicious purposes. But that's what DEF CON's all about, bring it to the attention of all, so that it has to be acted upon. So the hacking into cars and vulnerabilities, bits and pieces like that.
There's been there's apparently been a run of people, because I've got a keyless entry to my car, and supposedly there's some people ringing around on my estate at the moment to just go close to your house and they can pick up the code from your keyless entry fob, and they've got it and they can replicate it, because basically the keyless entry is just screaming the password all the time, isn't it? It's basically a password, I'm guessing, for getting into the car. So
the way it works is there's a sequence of passwords that the car will accept. And if you try to do a replay attack, which is what older car models used to do, so basically you press the button on your key. So say someone goes out to lunch, they leave the cars on the desk. So you press the button on the key, and is it an oscilloscope? Something, long word, captures that signal, stores it, and could replay it. But if you now take that to the car before the key gets there, it will work. However, if you don't get to the car in time and you press the car key before you press the replay attack, then the sequence has been jumped. So it has to go in that sequence. So if you play one later on in the chain, you're sat there pressing the button.
Right.
It's not going to work.
So if I'm storing my key out of range of my car and the person goes to that location outside my house and picks up the sequence, they could then go to the car and open it up.
Yes, again, YouTube videos on this. The concept of a replay attack is just that. So I assume, I would hope that as the arms race progresses, that they better that. But one guy who hacked, there's a picture of a guy on YouTube. The thumbnail is he's like looking worried. I managed to hack into my car with his laptop. All he's done is gone far enough away from his car with his car keys, zapped into a scanner. It's picked that up and then it just replays that. But it becomes useless as soon as the car key next becomes available with the car, because it's now updated the register and the amount of entries. You've basically got a set of passwords, and if the key presses one further up the chain, then all the ones below it are redundant.
Right. It's also handy if you know that you wanted to break into that guy's car and there he is in his restaurant having a nice meal with his family. You go over there, sit with your laptop for 5 minutes, then wander over and take his car. So yeah, I have built myself a Faraday box. So I don't know. Now, this website selling these things are possibly for very strange people, because they seem to be concerned with security well beyond the sorts of things that concern me. But I think for putting my keys in at the end of the day to stop someone from replay attacking me is good enough. I think the guys who run these sites possibly wear tinfoil hats and are concerned about the government listening through their breakfast cereal or whatever. But
those replay attacks remind me a little bit of, I think it was Owarth, where they had the concept of a nonce. So a small number would go backwards and forwards, and if that number wasn't the same on following requests, it would start to detect that somebody else is trying to play messages in, and you would knock the whole thing out, and you'd have to re-authenticate from the start again.
With PGP in HTTP request, I think you're supposed to bake the time and date stamp in as part of the seal on the message, the hash, so that if anyone tries to replay, they have to include the time and date. And you also do a check to say, well, that time and date doesn't match now, that was yesterday or whatever, and it just rejects the message. So that's definitely a thing. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but if you want to see an awesome example of how stupid people can be sometimes, Troy Hunt has a video he runs with ways to easily get people's passwords off them. And it's like they're going around in public with a microphone saying, we're doing a documentary. It's a documentary about passwords. So we'd like to know all about how do people put secure passwords. What do you do? Oh, yes, it's like my dog's name and my favorite football team. Oh, really? What's your dog's name? And then they just get this guy to and then they'll say like, oh, so your password is this, and he's like, oh yeah. It's a brilliant video, and I reckon, if nothing else, watch that one. It's hilarious but terrifying. And I know from having worked in places. Oh, see you, Sean. I know having worked in places that stored plain text passwords that shouldn't have but did. People don't choose good passwords. They really don't. The my favorite football team one is not all that unusual. I'm a nerd, so I randomly generate all of my passwords.
Well, the football team thing, I can actually say many years ago, I worked for an internet firm, and their IT systems were the password for the database would have been Gooners.
Gooners? Is that a football team?
Yeah, well, that's Arsenal, I think. Is that the Gooners?
I don't know. I'm an IT guy. I don't know football.
Me too. I'm the same. We're in the wrong talk if you want to talk about football.
No, my wife is the sports fan.
Well, if you're not into sports, you mentioned Playboy before. One of the ladies I used to work with, I shall keep her name secret for her own safety. Her husband worked for the Dutch Navy and had a super user password set up, which incorporated her bra size on purpose to. But she knew this, and she pretty much told everyone about it. So it's probably the worst kept secret ever.
Yeah, because that. Yeah, but then the process of getting that information is a little bit above and beyond for the spies.
So well, you talk about this being unhackable, and you need to know the reference point. So you need to have that that book. No one ever said that it had to be a book.
No, it didn't. But although if it's just literally, I mean, a bra size is 2 characters, so that's not a very secure little bit of text. But yeah, I'll be honest. What I do, I use LastPass. I generate an 8-character password, and there are options to even make it easier to remember by not making too many obscure characters in it. And it means I've got a memory overhead for a few days on new password day, but eventually I remember it. So if nothing else, my fingers remember where to go when I've typed it enough times. So I think 8 characters changed on a regular basis is secure enough. So that's what I do. And I don't even think I'm insecuring myself by telling you this, because if there is no system that I could ever use to predict my password from time to time, there's no system you could ever use. That's the advantage there. And in fact, because of LastPass, I don't even know what most of my passwords are. I have no idea what my Amazon password is. It's 200 characters long. Good luck finding out what that is. I don't know. God, I hope I never have to type it in.
Glad my browser remembers.
I don't.
Yeah, same for me.
I think mine is set so that my LastPass fills it in for me, and I think I've got it set so it's push button. Because there have been hacks on LastPass and similar users by relying on the autofill feature to tell it that we're this website. You ought to autofill to us, and it just hands over the password. But I've got mine so it's like a right click and fill in if I trust the website. So it works for me and integrates in with my iPad and all sorts. I am a little bit of a security nerd on the side. You probably guessed by now. Cool. Anyone else have any fun stories? No, guessing not.
No, well, that was brilliant, Simon. I really enjoyed that. And I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today.